Welcome to another episode of Deep Dive into Real Estate by Team Luddy Dillon. This is the place where we simplify real estate for you, one topic at a time. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, buying or selling a house, that's always a big deal. But things can get, extra complicated when you're going through a separation or divorce.
Definitely. Emotions are running high, and suddenly you have to figure out what happens to the place you called home.
Exactly. And that's what we're tackling today.
Right.
The wild world of matrimonial homes in Ontario. It's not as simple as it sounds, folks.
Absolutely. There are a lot of misconceptions out there.
Like, what even is a matrimonial home? Is it just the house you lived in together?
Well, not necessarily. The legal definition in Ontario focuses on ordinarily occupied, meaning it's not just about ownership on paper, it's about how you use the property as a couple.
Okay, so how does that work in practice? Give us an example.
Sure. Let's say a couple has a house in the city, but they spend every summer at their cottage. Holidays, weekends, you name it, that cottage could also be considered a matrimonial home.
Hold on. You can have more than one matrimonial home.
That's right. It's all about how the property was used as a family home.
Wow, okay. So let's say one spouse owned the house before they even met their partner. Does that matter once they get married?
Once they're married and living there, it becomes a matrimonial home.
Meaning?
Meaning both spouses have equal right to possession, even if one of them bought it long before the marriage.
So even if, let's say, the husband bought the house years before meeting his wife, it's still 50-50.
Exactly. It doesn't matter who brought what to the table before the marriage.
Wow, that's a pretty big deal. So it's not like, say, a collection of rare stamps where you might keep it separate.
Nope. The full value of the matrimonial home is shared if they split, regardless of who had more assets going into the marriage.
Okay, so now things are getting messy. The couple wants to sell the matrimonial home. Do both people need to agree?
Absolutely. They both need to consent to selling, taking out a mortgage, or anything that affects the property.
What if one tries to sell without the other's consent?
It can lead to some serious legal trouble, especially for anyone who tries to buy that house thinking everything is above board.
Yikes. Talk about a nightmare scenario. So what happens if they just can't agree? One wants to sell, the other refuses.
That's where the courts can step in. One spouse can go to court and request an order, even if the other is completely against selling.
Oh, so there's a way to break the deadlock. But the courts wouldn't just force a sale for any reason, right?
You're right. They often look at something called unreasonable withholding of consent.
Unreasonable withholding of consent. Sounds complicated.
It can be. There's this case, Ivanchevich Borisa v. Borisa, that illustrates it well. This couple agreed that the husband would stay in the home until it sold, but he was supposed to cooperate with the sale.
Sounds straightforward enough. What happened?
He made things incredibly difficult, even threatened to, destroy some of their renovations out of spite.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, not a smart move. The wife had to take him to court, and the court ended up ordering the sale because his behavior was so unreasonable.
So the courts can step in and say, enough is enough.
Exactly. It's not a way for someone to just cling to the house forever, especially if they're not acting fairly.
Makes sense. But what about the kids? Do the courts consider them when making these tough calls?
Absolutely. The best interests of the children are a huge factor. They look at how disruptive moving would be and might even listen to the children's wishes if they're old enough to have a say.
That's good to hear. You wouldn't want to add even more stress for kids during a separation. What else do the courts consider?
A whole bunch of things, really. They'll look at the financial situation of each spouse, if there are any existing court orders about property or support payments, any written agreements they might have had, and whether there's other suitable housing available. And very importantly, they'll look at any history of domestic violence.
Wow, okay. That's a lot to take into account.
It is. These cases are complex, and it's important to have someone who understands the nuances.
Which is where a team like Luddy Dillon's comes in, especially for folks here in Peel region.
Right. Whether you're buying, selling, or dealing with a separation, they have the expertise to guide you.
Speaking of unique situations, we've been talking about married couples, but what about common law partners? Are the rules the same for them?
That's a great question. And this is where things get really interesting because common law couples don't automatically have the same property rights as married couples here in Ontario.
Wait, really? So if a common law couple splits, and the house is only in one person's name, The other person has no right to stay.
That's right. And they could sell or mortgage the house without the other partner's permission. No equal right to possession, like we talked about for married couples.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So even if more people are choosing to live common law these days, it's super important to understand those legal distinctions, especially when it comes to your home.
Definitely. These are the kinds of things that can have a big impact down the road.
And something we'll dig into even more as we continue our deep dive. But for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a flash to unpack even more about matrimonial homes in Ontario.
Okay, so we've talked about the law, but let's get real for a second. What does all this actually mean for you, the listener? Because knowing the rules is one thing, but what about actually dealing with this stuff when you're going through it?
Right. Like, it's all well and good to say equal right to possession, but what if you're the one who has to move out? Where do you even go? How do you afford that?
Those are really important questions. And then there's the whole financial side of things. I mean, whether you stay in the house or sell it, there are still mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities. All that stuff doesn't just magically go away because you're separated.
And then if you've got kids, whoa, the stakes just get even higher. I mean, moving is a big deal for anyone, but for kids especially. You got to think about how all of this is going to affect them.
Exactly. It's a lot to juggle, and honestly, that's where having a team like Laddie Dillon's in your corner can make a huge difference. They're all about helping people here in Peel Region make the best decisions, whether they're buying, selling, or dealing with all the complexities of a separation or divorce.
It's like you're already dealing with the emotional stuff, and then you've got this whole other layer of legal and financial stuff to figure out. It can be totally overwhelming.
It really can. And that's why it's so important to have someone you can trust, someone who knows the market, understands the laws, and gets what you're going through.
And that's where Laddie's experience is so valuable. He's been doing this since 2007, right here in Peel Region. I mean, he's seen it all. So you know you're in good hands.
Absolutely. And before we wrap things up today, I want to throw one more thing out there, something to think about. Have you ever considered a prenuptial agreement?
Ooh, a prenup. Not exactly the most romantic topic, right? But maybe it should be.
It's not about being negative or assuming things will go wrong. It's about being prepared, protecting yourself and your partner. A prenup can lay out exactly what happens to the house and other assets if you do end up separating.
It's like that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Maybe not the most fun thing to talk about, but it could save a lot of heartache and legal battles later on.
Exactly. And if that's something you're thinking about, Laddie Dillon and his team can help you with that too. They can put you in touch with lawyers who can draft an agreement that works for your situation.
So whether you're going through a separation, thinking about a prenup, or just have some general real estate questions, Laddie Dillon and his team are here to help.
You can reach Laddie at 905-598-0725. He and his team are ready to answer your questions, offer their expertise, and help you make the best decisions to protect yourself.
It's all about making sure you're informed and empowered. Because knowledge is power, right?
That's right. And on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive on matrimonial homes in Ontario.
We hope you found this helpful. It's a tricky topic, but we tried to make it, well, not too painful, and maybe even a little bit interesting.
We did our best, but it's important to remember that this is just a general overview. Every situation is different, and there's really no substitute for getting advice from qualified professionals like Laddie Dillon and his team.
Exactly. So if you're in Peel Region and you're going through a separation, thinking about a prenup, or just have general real estate questions, reach out to Laddie.
He's been helping people in Peel Region since 2007, and he's passionate about helping people navigate the sometimes complicated world of real estate.
You can give him a call at 905-598-0725. He and his team are here to answer your questions, give you their expert advice, and help you make decisions that are right for you.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you learned some new things and that you feel a little more confident about how this all works.
And until next time, happy house hunting. So, wow, we covered a lot of ground today.
We did.
I mean, from what makes a house a matrimonial home to, like, the whole thing about maybe having more than one, and then all those rules about selling, and what happens if you end up in court.
It can get pretty complicated.
Definitely. And we can't forget about that big difference between married couples and common law couples.
Right. Those property rights are totally different. People don't always realize that.
Yeah. And it can lead to some pretty big surprises if you're not careful.
For sure.
But like we said at the beginning, knowledge is power. The more you know about all of this stuff, the better prepared you are to make those big real estate decisions, whether you're going through a separation or just thinking about the future.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have someone like Laddie Tillen and his team in your corner, especially when you're dealing with, well, all the ups and downs of a separation or a divorce.
Right. It can be a really emotional time, and you need someone who gets it, someone who can help you navigate all the legal and financial stuff, too.
Absolutely.
And that's what Laddie's so good at. I mean, he's been doing this since 2007, right here in Peel region. He knows the market, he knows the laws, and he's helped so many people through this.
He has. So if you're in Peel region and you need some guidance, whether you're facing a separation, thinking about a prenup, or just have questions about buying or selling.
Or even investing.
Right, investing too. Give Laddie a call. He's at 905-598-0725. He and his team are happy to answer your questions and, just make sure you're making the best choices for your situation.
Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Making sure you're informed, making sure you're protected.
Exactly.
Well, we've come to the end of our deep dive into matrimonial homes in Ontario.
We have.
We hope you found it helpful and, maybe even a little bit entertaining.
It's a complex topic, but hopefully we broke it down in a way that makes sense.
And if you have any questions, you know who to call. Laddie Tillen, 905-598-0725. He and his team are here to help.
Thanks for joining us today.
And until next time, happy house hunting.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We will be back with something new and something interesting.